So yesterday, our afternoon session, I mainly focused on doing meditation, and within the meditation, there are different ways different ways to do the meditation for the different purposes. And during this session, I will try to add it on a little bit, and also, if there's enough time, I would like to continue a little bit on that, the morning main topic, that is, the conceptual and non-conceptual minds. Mm-hmm. So yesterday, we, briefly touched on previous 2 days, my, the sharing on the meditation, but I added a little bit on the understanding of the application of the mindfulness, and with the mindfulness, the what you call the introspection or meta awareness. There's sometimes used. There's also another term is used instead of the introspection. Alertness, mental alertness is also used as a interchangeable in English term. Introspection, independent, Geshe. So in the Tibetan Buddhism, which is closely following the and in the Sanskrit Buddhist traditions, when the cultivation of shamatha combining, in that sense, cultivation of stillness and clarity, with these, to cultivate these two qualities of the mind in order to experience full shamatha combining, then the tools, mental tools, are mainly these two mindfulness and introspections are explained. And but in general, certain Buddhist traditions and the modern contemplative traditions, they all tend to use mindfulness in the sense, the moment by moment, unjudging, the observation or the awareness. I'm using very broad sense, so sometimes it's useful to do that, and yesterday I explained, and I will not repeat that. Now, in terms of the cultivation of stability or the stillness and the clarity, to enhance, to cultivate, then all challenges that we face mentally, that we face, are the two mental, if I use that term, hindrances. Two mental hindrances. These two mental hindrances are excitation. Sometimes the term is used as the excitation, and the other one is laxity. In Tibetan, the gopan is excitation, easily to be distracted, and laxity, in the sense, losing the mental strength, being more low down, there's no freshness, laxity. Those are the two main, obstacles or hindrances that we face internally. These two hindrances are not there as independently, not there as some kind of, independent in the sense, without related our way of living, our way of thinking, all those things. They are also exaltation as well as laxity. Both are related, connected to our way of life. And this which I mentioned earlier, morning, not avoiding from these two extremes lifestyles, the indulging sense pleasures and or neglecting basic necessities. in general, cultivation of mental qualities, such as simple as lack of clarity and stillness. It requires lots of and attentions that they all, including our diets, including all these other things. For example, they're doing a simple sitting meditation to harness or to enhance stillness, the clarity, the place where we sit, the room or the house, and the actual sitting. And particularly in the early stage, these are also, important parts to help us to cultivate these mental qualities. And we're talking about very, very basic mental qualities. Basic yet extremely necessary. Without stillness and the clarity in our mental state, it is very, very difficult to cultivate other mental qualities. Like, for example, love, compassion, and wisdom. To really develop these mental qualities, basic our mental states need to be stable, and have the clarity. Like as I mentioned earlier, yesterday or day before yesterday, to want to have a good crops, good harvest before we are going to sow the what you call the very healthy seeds. The ground needs to be very, very fertile and good, rich ground. Like that, to grow any long-lasting, good, healthy mental, the mental qualities, our minds, general state of minds, need to be very stable. And that is the stillness and the clarity. It's very, very basic qualities, yet needed, necessary qualities to cultivate some other. So, in that case, to point what I'm making here is because I have introduced two terms, two mental states, exaltation and relaxity are the two main hindrances need to overcome through the application of mindfulness and awareness. And I will not use awareness, they become new term, introspection. In order to do that, it is not just banging your head with the, holding the mindfulness and awareness, mindfulness and the introspection, and then fighting with the excitation and the relaxation. Need to look at all the lifestyles and so forth. And that is something useful, helpful to remember, particularly people who want to work for the long term. Bit by bit, then need to look at all. I'll tell you one nice story which happened to me. That was an early time, my time in the West, while I was in France, South France. I was in South France for 3 years before moving to London. And I was invited to give a talk, to give a talk in an evening talk in a relatively big, what you call the department store, a store where they sell all sorts of packets like that, 3 or 4, and they have this conference in the evening in their conference room at the basement. So 2 things happen, but both really bothers me very much at that time. So that evening my talk was disaster, completely gone wrong. Because my point is, my general state of mind is not calm or not stable because of those 2 things. Not the preparations that I've done or not the subject that I know, but mainly my general state of mind is bothered by the 2 things. The first thing is both are very, very physical, but that impacts my mind. First thing is, that so the place where I was, who was living and the city Toulouse is, and the person, the guy, who works in that department store in Toulouse, he said he's going to come to pick me up such and such hour, time, but he came much earlier than I expected. So because of that, though I was ready and everything, but I didn't put my pair of shoes, but I went with the indoor. The flip-flop, not really flip-flop, that kind of, but I didn't notice until halfway through. But it is in a big department store, there are all these business people, and so if that had happened in the monastery, it would bother me. Who cares what you're wearing? But I was told maybe a few months ago or some time ago, one of my Tibetan friends, you shouldn't go with these to outside. These are indoors. So that going to my head. So I was sitting in the car, and I noticed I was wearing it. So that bothers very much in my head. So that's the chattering. Why you didn't put these shoes before? Blah, blah, blah. That's one thing. Second thing, the talk, was really nicely prepared, and lots of people, and where I'm going to sit in a chair, but I hardly did my talk sitting on a chair. Mostly it's really train and learn to sit. But it was on a chair. And that really feel very, very uncomfortable. So those 2 external causes, that the entire my mind, general mind, mental state was, disturbed. So that is the sign, my mind is not, in a stable state. Sign simply because of the external condition that disturbed me. So that's here. Now when we do the training or the working with our minds, cultivating these good mental qualities, our basic states of mind need to be stable. Still, not very much bothered, disturbed by the external things. For me, that's very, very clear examples. It still sits in my head, I remember that quite vividly. So like that. So the exaltation and the laxity, both excitation is very much related to this craving, clinging, mainly is from those, or if we use the other term, attachment. Excitation comes through the attachment. Which will come later, sometime tomorrow or day after tomorrow. As I used earlier, day before yesterday, use this Buddhist jargon, 3 poisons: ignorance, attachment, and aversion. According to the Buddhist psychological texts, these 3, all our distorted mental states, jealousy, envy, the excitation, laxity, all these distorted mental states come from these 3, the poisons. Sometimes they overlap, but sometimes they have these kind of distorted affections come from attachment, not from anger or hatred, and so on and so forth. So the dealing with the excitation and laxity is not simply application of mindfulness and the introspection. It is looking over all our mental states, and that's important. So I want to make that a little bit from yesterday's. Then yesterday I shared with you saying the meditation. Though the meditation on love, loving kindness, great compassion, altruism, and the meditation on the impermanence, nature of dukkha, and so on, they all are meditation. But how to do the meditation is different, as I mentioned yesterday. The meditation on love, compassion, altruism, and so forth, these are the mind which is meditating with love, compassion, and altruism. That mind itself tuned into the loving kindness or great compassion, like that. But on the other hand, when we are doing meditation on nature of impermanence, nature of dukkha, then that mind meditating on impermanence, that mind tries to understand, tries to realize impermanence, dukkha, emptiness, whatever, nature of mind, so like that. And that is something useful to remember. Then today's our heading is related to our main topic. Our main topic, that is the nature of mind. Nature of mind. And particularly, the mind is defined or explained in 2 parts: its nature and its function. Particularly in this case, in its nature, that is luminosity or luminously clear. At the moment we are really dealing with that as a nature of the mind, luminosity. So there are several ways to do the meditation to reach to experience that quality of luminosity, luminosity. So today here, what I'm going to say is in terms of the meditation. So far, when our discussion, to talk on the subject, we talk about the different categories, different kinds of minds, sense consciousnesses, mental consciousness. Today, conceptual and non-conceptual, and so forth. Coming days, we are going to talk others. So, in this very grounded perception, the perception or conceptual thoughts, very grounded, some are positive, some are negative. How can we enrich our meditation, our mind, our meditative mind, which is meditating nature of the mind, in this case, luminosity? How can we reach there to experience that, that quality, the quality of luminously clear? The one way is, really to go through as I used yesterday and today, peeling away all these different layers, and then try to reach, touch that nature of. In this case, it involves lots of, lots of, the exercises to peel, to understand, all those thoughts, all those constructive thoughts, destructive thoughts, those perception, those, what you call the sense perceptions, all those to peel away, they try to reach there. And it is a long process, but a very, very reliable process. Reliable in the sense, if we follow this process through studying, learning all these distortions, all these, the mistakings, all these positives, virtues, whatever, compassion, loving kindness, peeling bit by bit, then try to understand what is there as a nature of mind, to touch that bare nature, that luminous character. It is, as said those great teachers, reliable way to understand the bare nature of the mind, or the basic nature of the mind, luminously clear. The other method, meditation, or the method, to really experience that luminously clear nature of mind, is simply observing at the meditation session, out of through reliable teachers' instruction, then simply observing without any judgment, whatever thoughts, emotions occur, let it occur, let it happen without any judgmental. if we carry on, in that form of meditation, it is said from time to time between the previous thought and the next or the following thoughts or the whatever perception had not reached between these two in the gap, the meditator, the practitioner may experience a glimpse of nature of luminosity, So that is really another way to touch or to experience through the meditation, to experience the nature of the mind. In this case, luminosity. So, in other words, from the valid instructor teachers, receiving valid instructions, then the individuals sit in the meditation session. And when he or she sits on the meditation session, whatever thoughts, emotions, whether they are positive, constructive, negative, destructive, whatever thoughts occurs, let it happen, not pursue, not argue, not reject, not provoke. Without all these mental game, and then between between the two different thoughts or emotions, a glimpse of initially, a glimpse of experience, of luminosity, and that is a instruction, so helpful or useful to experiment. Here, what we need is good instructor. Good instructor, meditation instructor, and also overall one's own mental state needs the skill of not following the emotions, thoughts, arguments that occur during the sitting. Not following. If we don't follow, if we don't argue, if we don't provoke, or if we don't reject, somehow these chattering mental states tend to subside, tend to subside or minimize, and through that we have a chance or opportunity to experience initially a glimpse of the nature of luminosity. Sometimes term is used clear light, but that's the one way to do the meditation. And as I just said, it requires both good instructor and also meditator needs good skill. Analogy is used if we don't pursue, or if we don't provoke, or if we don't reject, or if we don't play with the judgment, gradually these thoughts, emotions, chatterings will, slow down and eventually sort of, that less occurrence. And the analogy is used, that in the ancient time, when those, what you call the merchants, travel on in the sea with the big ship, and they, I don't know whether they all of they do or not, and this is coming from Indian culture. These merchants, with them, they take relatively big birds with them. And in the middle of the ocean, when they are not very sure whether what they are seeing from the distance, whether there's an island or it is just simply, just wave or whatever, they tend to release the birds towards that direction. And when the birds are released, if what they are seeing in the long distance, the bird will not return back, stay. But what they see in the long distance, if it is not island, it is just mirage, then they will return back. And they will come back to the boat of the ship. And that is the analogies used here in some of the masters. So once we don't argue to our chatter minds, don't argue, don't provoke, don't reject, eventually, naturally, or comes down. And like the birds, if there's no place to land, they will come back and sit. They come back to the shade. Similar to that, all these, if we what's the right word, pursue or argue these chattering minds, then we end up in an endless argument, endless chattering. One thought leads to another thought. One wish to lead to another wish, and so forth. More and almost no end. Then difficult to see, to find the gap, to experience, the basic nature of the mind. So, that type of meditation is available. Or some of these great teachers have taught. Good to experiment. I'm not saying it will work. Don't ask me whether it worked for me or not. But why not to explore? So another type of meditation, traditionally, particularly in the Buddhist circle, in ancient time, particularly when the main follower were monk, or there are these meditation to deal with the attachment to other person or other people's body, to deal with that kind of attachment. The meditation is, this particular meditation is taught to be very forcefully, in the sense, forcefully in the sense, though it's not there as a real, but very deliberately, intentionally thinking it is real that the other person or the people's body as not this kind of natural, the general shapes and forms, but in a form of skeleton. Yeah, skeleton. I have difficulty to see that. Pure forms, In Tibetan, that type of meditation is called Sati Giri. So initially focusing on a particular part of the body, either the nose or the forehead, then strongly imagine going through, then focusing on that kind of pure form structure. And it is that once his or her mind is familiarized with that imagination, initially is imagine. It is very much pure imagination form, like a visualization. When you do the visualization, you visualize in front of you certain image, certain, in this case, in the Buddhist case, certain spiritual being. So there are these forms of meditation. Something which is not there as whatever we want to see, but forcing our mind to see it is there. And gradually, somehow it is, not the sounds, it's not the seeing as actually from our unconsciousness as the entire, the bone structure, but mental force, mentally perceiving that. So there are these meditation. So point what I'm making is here again is overall. If we train our mind, if we really give good instruction to our mind is very, very flexible to learn these things. Something is not there, but if we train, if we instruct our mind to see it, it's there, can see it. It will take time. So those are just simply a glimpse of some form of meditation method. You might be interested to learn. The main thing here is that term familiarization. Familiarize our mind with what we want, what we are meditating on. More familiarized. The better chance to see that, to experience that, to perceive that. And that is yeah. Okay, we'll have time. I'm going to do a little bit another type of meditation before we move to what you call this morning's subject. This one, the very traditional, Taoism as well as, the Bodhisattva and his teachings, meditation, commonly well known, the four foundation of mindfulness meditation. And here, the body feeling mind or feeling or sensation, feeling, mind, and consciousness, and the phenomena. These are the four objects of the meditation, the four objects of meditation. In Tibetan, the what you call the Buddhist scriptures, and also mainly comes from Sanskrit tradition from India. Meditation on these four objects, the body, sensation, or feeling, mind, and the phenomena. The main reason, of course, to raise the mindfulness through, cultivating mindfulness, then to see, to understand, or another term is to counteract some of our distorted mental states related to the body, related to the feeling or sensation, related to the mind, and related to the other phenomena. So some, scriptures said that the term is used. First, I will use this term, which is quite helpful in the long term. Immediately, it will not make sense that much for you, but for the long term, if we study these classical, the Buddhist text, it will make sense. So that there are all, misunderstandings or distorted mental states. First one is related to the body. I'm talking about all. Something which is not, what's the English word they use? Unattractive. We have this, the perception, wrong perception, attractive. Taking it as very general, not in a particular here and there individuals or related to the body, something which is not attractive, but we perceive, believe, think attractive. That's the first thing, distorted, related to the body. The second, the feeling or sensation. And here the term is used. In Tibetan. Nature of dissatisfaction, nature of dissatisfaction, but we perceive as a, the bliss or pleasant related to the feeling. That is the distortion. In reality, according to the Buddhist teachings, even some of the bliss experiences that we gain from the the meditation, from the other mental activities, they will not last forever. First of all, after when they start to deteriorate, they turn into dukkha, suffering. So there's this mistaken or distorted this thought or belief we have related to the feeling and related to the mind. When I use this term, distortion, you may think, how this happened? I've never thought about that. But it is what in the classical tense, that's what they said. Something which is, momentarily changing nature, but we have a distorted mind, thinking, believing, going to last forever. In other words, believing, thinking, it is permanent, related to mind. I'm sure you will disagree and you will say, no, I never thought about my mind is permanent. But if you closely observe, there is a strong element of it unchanging. Then the fourth phenomena, these phenomena in the sense all things and events, they all come into being, they all come into existence, dependent on many other factors. We perceive them, we believe them as a self-sufficient, as a in and of themselves. Though in reality, they are what you call dependent on many other factors, not self-sufficient, not in and of themselves, rather very much related, dependent on many factors, but what we perceive, including our those inner experiences, hopes, fears, all those things. And these are the four, the distortions related to the body, sensation, mind, and the phenomena. And in order to deal with these four distorted mental states, the mindfulness, four foundation of mindfulness is introduced. And this is what here, commonly you will come across in the Pali texts as well as in the Sanskrit, Buddhist texts. The purpose of, cultivation of mindfulness related to these four, to apart from cultivation of mindfulness in this case in the sense of moment by moment, without any judgmental awareness, mindfulness in that sense, cultivation that fundamental state. But the main function, the main task is to reduce, to minimize these distortions. It is said in the Buddhist scriptures, these four distortions are the what you call the main causes that keep us, the what you call this dissatisfactory or unsatisfactory nature, or in a more the wider term, unenlightened nature. So in the Pali canon, if you read, I can't read Pali, but they read some of those English translations. At the end, I think the middle end, for foundation of mindfulness meditation, text, in the middle and around the end of the text, when it explains the benefits of doing the meditation on the four conditions of mindfulness meditation, it is explained, what you call purifying these distortions. That is the purpose of the meditation. So which is quite useful, to know, very classical Buddhist, the very authentic classical Buddhist scriptures. Foundation of mindfulness meditation is more than, much more than simply cultivating non-judgmental awareness. It is more than that. Yeah, so, okay. That is added on the mindfulness or added on the meditation. Okay. Now go back to, because hopefully this is still a little bit fresh, the morning main topic. We are talking about what you call the conceptual and the non-conceptual awareness or consciousness or mind, whatever term that we use. From yesterday's mental categories that we learn are the sense consciousnesses and the mental consciousness. So we learn 6, 5 sense consciousnesses. Then on top of that, the 6th mental consciousness. Among these, the 5 sense consciousnesses are non-conceptual awareness or consciousnesses. And the 6th mental consciousness, some of them, and particularly in our current level, our 6th mental consciousness, majority of them, then I'm using the plural terms because when we count as in the category, we count the 6th one as a 6th mental consciousness. And in that 6th mental consciousness, of course, we have many different kinds of 6th mental consciousness can occur. So that one using plural. So 6th mental consciousness can be conceptual, and in our case, most of the time they are conceptual. But through the training, conceptual the 6th mental consciousness, which conceptual 6th mental consciousness, through the training can become, non-conceptual, direct perception, through training, which we will look at that, sometime tomorrow on Friday, because this great Indian master, which I have already quoted many times, because Dhammakirti, him, and not his direct teacher, but they are related, Digna. These two masters' texts are the main sources. Of course, they are later in commentaries, but from the fourth Dhamma, sixth or seventh Dhamma, these masters' texts are the main sources to understand this epistemology. Abhidhamma texts are Buddhist texts, are the more listing different kinds of emotions, different kinds of afflictions, more like a list, in certain extents, like a psychology, But in these two masters' texts, written by these two, more epistemology, the understanding of the process of knowledge, process of the mistaken mind, how to into and go into different layers of process and so forth. So in Dhammakita's text, he had clearly stated, and some of the later Tibetan commentators have a more elaborated explanation, saying in some of our distorted, some of our mistaken mental state can gradually turn into understanding or realization. Not only understanding or realization, but also can turn into direct perception. So that is something which we'll look at when we reach at that stage. So now, currently I'm dealing with this. All the sense consciousnesses are non-conceptual, and therefore they are, direct perceptions. Then sixth, the mental consciousness can be, that most of that we have are the conceptual mind. So that means not direct to their objects. Whatever object they experience, they realize, they are not direct. So I'm going to say a little bit on that, which is important one, how it is not direct. So earlier this morning, I have briefly touched on, and I'll repeat here again. For us, ordinary people, for us to understand, to realize some of those hidden phenomena, hidden object, that earlier someone said, when I asked what would be the hidden object, there are several examples. One is goals, one semblance, another one is impermanence, and so forth. So take it, the impermanence as a hidden object. So for us, what kind of tools that we have to understand nature of impermanence, nature of impermanence of this body, nature of impermanence of this life, nature of impermanence of this event that we are participating in. So it is fact. It is a fact, that this body, this life, this event is, and they are not static. They are momentariness in their nature. They are not static. They are, taking all the time. not stay static. But to understand that nature, to understand that really nature more in a subtle level, we can understand impermanence in a gross level, as some of the earlier examples, things, a certain particular thing is there in front of us, then with the certain forces, it is destroyed, it is gone, it is become non-existent as a particular time, particular shape or color. We can say, yeah, that is impermanent. But in a more subtle levels of nature of impermanence, it is fact, but how can we understand that? And that is only initially, only through language and conceptual tools. And the conceptual tools. Now, through that, we will understand. Language, through language in the sense, through the explanation, how it works and how it is, and so on and so forth, and also with the thinking mind. For example, the table in front of us, the table or tablecloth, which is in front of us, for our naked eyes, we don't see that momentarily changing nature. We don't see. But we only see some of the growth, or very obvious, deterioration. These obvious deterioration take place in a very subtle form, bit by bit by bit. And understanding that is through the thinking process, through thought, not by through the conceptual mind, not from the perception. So that's what we have. Yet, as I mentioned this morning, Buddhist teachers, they said these thoughts are mistaken. These thoughts are deceptive. They are not relating. They are not relating, or they are not engaging, directly to the object, what they are realizing, what they are understanding. So they are relating with the object, with the thing, what they are realizing is through what the Buddhist term is used, the conceptually constructed object. For example, if I say here, think about a very powerful, fire. Have a what you call the power to consume, many strong materials. When I ask you, you immediately, in your mind, a thought occur, a powerful, a strong fire. So through that, we are communicating, we are relating to that fire. And we are believing, we are relating and talking and what you call interacting with the fire. But in reality, it is mentally constructed fire. It is not real fire. So when I say that, think about a fire, powerful fire which can consume these materials. In your mind, you will have an image, an image of fire, powerful fire. How that image occurs, and through that image, relating to the fire. But what we are relating to the fire, that image is not real fire. So that's one thing. Think about that when I said fire, you have this very general or universal image of fire. When you say that fire construct, think about fire. When I say think about fire, in your thought there is an image of fire burning. And that image of fire is not real. It is constructed, mentally constructed. Yet, and that mentally constructed fire that you get in your thought is not fire in your home, not fire in the garden, not fire on the real fire on the hill. It is what quite often, depending on the term is used, what's called the universal. But that is, very, that universal fire doesn't exist. It is just mentally constructed. And in that sense, all the conceptual thoughts, through the conceptual thoughts, when we try to understand, when we try to realize, when we try to, get to the object, always, through that mentally constructed image. And that is deceptive. And that is, not real. It is simply mentally constructed, first thing. And not just mentally constructed, it is not a particular fire. Particular fires are real fire. But in our head, that constructed image of fire is what is called is universal. But that universal fire, apart from the universal fire, is not real fire. That really doesn't exist. That's only mentally constructed. So the point what I'm making here is, if you remember earlier, this morning, I used a particular, what's called the statements relation to the conceptual mind. Conceptual minds are always mistaken, and mistaken with the dualistic aspects or appearances, dualistic appearances. And here, dualistic appearances, and we can study in many different layers. This is one of that dualistic appearances. Dualistic in this sense, which is the conceptually constructed that is dualistic. In Tibetan, it is Tibetan term is. I forgot my Tibetan terms. dualistic. So dualistic in the sense, which is not real, but in our mental process, we think we're dealing with the real fire, but it is not real. It is purely mentally constructed. So in that sense, it is also mistaken or deception, which is we're not really dealing with the real fire, but in our thought process, in that to try to understand what we want to understand, we have this sense of belief it is real, that what we have constructed in our mind, in our conceptual mind, in our thought. So that is something useful, helpful to understand. The thought processes are very, very complicated. Unlike the direct perception, the non-conceptual mind. Non-conceptual minds do not have that kind of process. Thought, conceptual minds have awareness or consciousness, have lots of processing. Through these different processes, they try to reach to the object what they want to perceive or what they want to realize, cognize. So therefore, this, as I mentioned earlier, this double side sword, like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, thought conceptual minds are helpful to understand, to realize those hidden phenomena. At the same time, if we are not fully aware of the processes that these conceptual thoughts go through, these we will that these will deceive us, something which is not real, we think it is real. So those are the things which useful to remember. Because I pushed through this subject today, because we already touched on this morning, and if I come back tomorrow or day after tomorrow, then we need to refresh everything again. So it is a little bit boring, but it needs to do with that. Then here, non-conceptual mind, as far as the object is concerned, whatever object that might be, sense objects or non-sense objects. Non-conceptual minds, what they call, in terms of you use the label, the object, it is called appearing object. Appearing object. Whatever appears to their mind, to the non-conceptual, that's it. There's no another type of object, what is called the observed object. Or another term is used, engaged object. For the thought, there is this not only the appearing object, but it also has engaged object. Engaged object. So now here, this I will come back again to talk about. So far, we only talk about the subject. Subject in the sense, consciousnesses, sense consciousnesses, mental consciousness, conceptual, non-conceptual. We haven't discussed their object. That's the hard part of the story. To talk about consciousness, to talk about awareness. Also, we need to talk about object of that awareness, that consciousness. Without talking about object, it is a little bit meaningless to talk about the subject. Subject in the consciousness, in the sense of consciousness. In the Buddhist literature, in the Buddhist literature, subject is divided into two: individuals or the beings and the consciousness. The being or the individual as a subject, it's simply because that individual's consciousness or consciousnesses relate to the object, then the individual, the person, is labeled as a subject. As simple as that. But main subject, in this case, subject and object, subject refers to the consciousnesses or awareness. This is just not that important. I thought I should say this. Okay, we have a little bit more time, about half an hour. You can have a question.
Maybe a bit short question. That's also something. Maybe it's a little bit of a tricky question. When I have this mental file image, and I'm in an environment, I'm freezing. I don't have anything to make fire. I'm freezing. I'm really very cold. I cannot protect my body enough from the cold. Do you think this mental fire could increase my body warmth?
Very, very good question. What do you think?
I think yes. I think not from -10 to +10, but maybe 2 or 3 degrees, and maybe it can keep me alive.
I'm sure you have heard some of these teachings or stories, not really stories, it's real stories. Some of these meditators, Hindu meditators, as well as Buddhist meditators, they are able to stay up in the mountain, without that much clothes, using certain types of meditation to keep their body warm, not just warm, quite hot, to melt the ice, or to dry the wet clothes. There are these things, but I never experienced, I can't say. But the mental, as I mentioned, the first day, if we utilize our minds properly, our mind, if I use singular, our mind is more powerful than our physical body in many different ways. So, in general, when we talk about heat, warm, the fire is so. I don't know. I really don't know in reality, but there are these meditations, as I mentioned. But I don't want you to go to it up in the mountain meditation. Okay. Any other question?
So we talked about this idea of the conceptual, non-conceptual lines. And then we bring us back to this concept of the luminous clarity. I think you kind of created a picture this morning that there, at least the way I see it, like these layers between, you know, the inherent existence of luminous clarity and our felt experience, which you could call maybe either the defilements, the hindrances. Can you talk a little bit about where these come from? You know, in terms of, you know, do we come into the world luminously clear? You know, how does karma relate to that? How does the conditioning of our environment relate to that? I mean, obviously that's a big question, but maybe you can kind of specifically focus on like where does that come from in terms of this life? And
You mean the luminous, yeah, to by that or any other material?
the defilements or the hindrances to us experiencing the state of luminous clarity.
Okay. According to the Buddhist literatures, these departments or these distortions that we have is divided into two forms. One is, in the first I will use the Tibetan terms, Khensur, Kundak. Khensur has a connotation of born with, in others, come with us. Kundak, it has a connotation of learn later. I mean, it is very obvious, isn't it? I saw a nice program when I was in the UK, you know, how these young kids, maybe age 1 or 1.5 or 2, you know, how they learn to put into different categories. You know, white children and the colored children put together. Initially, they got different shapes, but gradually, when they grow up, they start to have this distinctions or the different shapes. So these are the learned, obviously. So in the Buddhist literature, many of our distorted mental states are coming from innate, and many of other distorted mental states are through the culture, through the belief system, through what we encounter, and so forth. So there are two kinds. Now, this first time, inborn, and yet born with. So the Buddhist teachings or Buddhist believe there were many lives in the past, and there will be many lives in the future. What do you think? Is that better, or just have one life? And before we go further, I want to ask you, from your point of view, which one is better? To have many lives in the past, also to have many lives in the future, or just have this life, enjoy it? Which one?
I think it's twofold. I mean, I think it's much more fascinating to, at the very least, have the belief that this existence has a sense of continuation to it through multiple lives.
No, I'm not asking philosophical answer, just from your perspective. Which one would you prefer? Keep all the philosophical things, shut all those doors.
I prefer multiple lives.
Okay. I prefer the other one. In reality, I don't know, but I prefer that one. Okay, this is it. Tashi was born. Tashi born, that's it. I had this conversation with a very elderly English lady. I know that, her daughter. So in one house, there 3 elderly English ladies live together. The mother and 2 daughters. And the mother lived until 107. And I visited occasionally. I mean, now that she passed away. When she was 104, 105, she still made afternoon tea for 3 of them. And after 4, that's her turn. Breakfast and lunch are made by her daughters, but even both daughters were in their 80s. So I know the family relatively well and for a relatively long time. So one time I asked her, because out of my deep curiosity, she doesn't have that much any spiritual belief. I asked her, are you clear about death? She said, Tashi, that question should not be there. Should not ask. I said, why? She said, death for what? Fear of what? Then I didn't ask any further question. For me, finishing this life is all right. But what's thereafter is why. But that is, I'm not saying I totally understand that, there would be life after this. I'm not saying that, but my mind is colored with that belief. So, sadly, that's in my head, but I prefer to look at this. And then now go back to our main conversation. So, I was saying, what was your question?
I see where the thought is.
Yeah. So just if you look at it in this lifetime, many of our life get this life. Food, drink, clothes, many of those are very much colored by how we are brought up. And one of my clear example is, that I like Tibetan tea. Not too much, but like a cup of tea, Tibetan tea, which is salty, which is buttery, which is milky. For the many Westerners, that is salty, buttery, milky. It sounds soup, not tea. But I like that. Then my enjoying life is through the art of how I was grown up. So this habitual gives you the habituation, this habit gives you push one to another. And sometimes this can be called, in Tibetan called pajak, propensity. Pajak. So in this lifetime, my earlier growth in how I was brought up, that impacts my perception, my conceptual thoughts, like, dislike, all this. Then, as if you believe in a previous life, some of the previous lives, what we like, how we believe will impact to this life. And that's what here it is called, or born with thinking, not learning this life. One particular example in the Buddhist literature is self-grasping. What do you think about it? Particularly those mammal animals, not the birds, but even the birds. The mammals, soon after they were born, maybe in a few slightly different, in the different species, but soon after they're born, they start to search, to eat, to feed. I mean, Western science may say just survival reason, biologically they just want to, the individual to search something to eat and drink, milk. What do you think about it?
Why did they do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they're immediately
Survival, damage.
Sure.
Sorry. Grasping. What do you think? I don't know. But according to the Buddhist literature, I'm not saying this one, and searching something to survive. I'm not saying that. But according to the Buddhist literature, the term using this jargon, self-grasping, mindset, is very much involved with us. We don't need to train ourselves, feel, and linguistically may need to learn, but from the experience level, there's this without training, without sort of learning. It's very much in our genetic art. So there's no reason if that sense of I is there, then the other will snowball, other grasp, whether they're valid, correct, or distortion. So the answer to your question in this long story is, yes, according to the Buddhist literature, some of these distorted mental states are due to born with, therefore they are called Geshe, energies, together they grow, to come into existence. The others are more learned later, through the culture, through the belief system, through interconnecting different ways to do that. Any other question? Yes. Two questions. One there.
You explained about the meditation for dealing with attachment.
Meditation.
You were explaining the breathing meditation to deal with our attachment. So you mentioned that we should imagine bone structure of our body so that it will help to detach. So this is my understanding. This is how I heard you, that I'm imagining my body structure as if I'm no more there. That's the reality. So why should I attach to other things? I'm trying to find a way to detach myself. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, you're right. You're right. Traditionally, as I use the term traditionally, at the Buddhist time, and also, most meditators are male monks, and one of the difficulties for them is to deal with their attachment to the opposite. Attachment. And for them to meditate, to deal with that kind of attachment, meditating in that particular fashion is extremely powerful. It is said, I haven't done that. But in individual cases, attached to his or her body is too strong. This meditation may work. I use the term may, careful. Thank you. That's the one question here, then here.
You were mentioning a meditation wherein people can experience the nature of mind. Is there a name for that meditation? Is there a name for that meditation?
Name, yes. Okay. There is no particular name for the name as a title like that, but you can say, you can use from its functional point of view, you can use as a understanding meditation to experience the nature of the mind, that you can use that.
Is that similar to awareness of awareness type of meditation?
Yeah, this term awareness, and which earlier that the other day I mentioned, and awareness is the Tibetan English word, and that is translation for the in Tibetan words Rigpa. And Tibetan words Rigpa has a different explanations at the different stages. For example, I mentioned this other day, for example, in the Nyingma tradition, in the Tibetan Buddhism, out of the four traditions, in Nyingma tradition, sometimes the term Rigpa, awareness, Rigpa and awareness, is explained in a more fundamental levels of the mind, rather than which I explain at this stage, mind, consciousness, Rigpa are synonymous. So in that sense, the meditation on awareness can be interpreted in understanding of nature of mind. I know some of the Tibetan teachers who teach that in that tradition, instead of saying understanding the nature of the mind, instead of that, they may use the term understanding the awareness of the mind, or awareness. So that they sometimes may need some nuance, interpretation, explanation.
Just finally, you were saying the way to do it is to look at the points between the two thoughts. Or like, I think I'm paraphrasing. Would one always find calmness between those two thoughts, or could there be any type of emotion? Because it's the nature of mind. Would it always be the person's nature of mind, which may not be calm?
The idea is this. The individual, his or her mental state is fully in a form of, awareness, or in a form of, the fully conscious state. And in that fully conscious state, when all these chattering minds, thoughts, emotions are subsided with skillful meditation, in the process of reduction of these chattering thoughts, there's a possibility to experience that pure conscious level of pure awareness, or another term that we are using is pure luminosity. But finding the gap, because at the reduction, subsiding, the chattering mind will not last at long. So the other thought will occur. So finding that gap, is not easy. And also not just finding the gap, between the gap, our general state of the mind must be fully conscious, fully aware. Otherwise it will not work. Naturally, in our sleep, most of our chattering minds are gone. But it doesn't help us to see the luminosity instead of outside of the consciousness. So that is the trick, or learn the skill. Okay. This one here. Okay. Yeah.
What is the relationship between analytical meditation, which uses lots of conceptual thoughts, and then eventually we are transferred to non-conceptual insight?
Yes. So yesterday also, you're right, yesterday I introduced you another two terms, placement meditation and analytical meditation. So in the process of analytical meditation, and particularly what you are analyzing, depends on what you are analyzing, in the process of consistent, very focused analytical meditation on some of those subtle phenomena, like nature of impermanence, or nature of selflessness, according to the Buddhist teachings. Because the subject matter is very subtle, so because subject matter is very subtle, very nuanced, your analysis also must be very sharp, very focused. So in that process, that initially that analytical mind is the conceptual, then because your analysis through the analytical processes, your mind may refine further and further stage. In the process of refining, your analytical mind may reach to the concept, perceptual, and perceptual related to the object that you are meditating on. Yeah. This we'll talk further a little bit. They need some explanation and need some, the detailed stages. Any other question? Okay, good. Then now we have 5 minutes to say the 21 paragraphs. Page 270, 270. Om Je Je Ma Pa Ma Jung Ma Cha Se Chang Ze Do Ma Nyo Ma Pa Mo Chen Ne Ge Chi Lo Da Ta Ma Ji E Sung Gu Chi Di She Di Ge Su Chi Wa Ne Ni Jung Ma Chang Ze Do Ge Da Wa Gun Du Kao Wa Ji Ni Si Bei She Ma Pa Ma Dong Da So Pa Nam Ji Ra Du Chen Le Le Ra Ba Chang Se Sen Mu Chu Ni Ge Di Bei Me Chang Ne Na Bar Ge Ma Jian Hua Zu Ju Ge Du Shi Wa Se Hua San Di Ju Nie Ma Chang Se Li Xin Xu Bi Zu Do Ta Ye Na Bar Jia Wa Chi Ma Ma Liu Pa Lu Jin Ba Do Bei Jia Wei Si Di Xin Du De Ma Chang Ze Du Da Ra Hu Yi De Da Xiao Da Nam Ga Ga Ma Ji Bian Dong Bu Xia Di Me De Lu Ba Me Ba Gu Ba Me Ma Chang Ze Jia Jin Bai La Sang Ba Long La Na So Wang Ju Che Ma Zhong Bo Ro La Ti Sa Nam Da Ye Ji So Ji Di Ne Ge Ma Chang Ze Ji Ji Jia Da Bei Ji Pa Ru Zu Guo Ram Du Chou Ma Ye Bo Yuan Yang Xia Di Ne Me Ba Fu Ba Xin Du Ba Ma Chang Ze Du Li Ji Hua Jie Bo Li Li Ba Wu Na Hua Zhou Ma Xue Yi Quan Ne Tong Yin De Zhe Zhang Luo Tam Jie Ma Lu Se Ma Chang Ze Gun Zhou Sun Zhe Cha Ge Sen Nu Do Guan Na Bar Ge Ma Ma Lu Chou Ji Guo Lo Ge Bei Rang Di Re Di Tong Na Zhe Ma Chang Ze Ra Du Ga Wa Chi Bei Gu Yin Le Di Chen Hua Bei Ma Xian Hua Ra Xie Du Da Ra Yi Le Dan Ji Lian Wang Du Se Ma Chang Ze Sa Ji Dong Ye So Na Tam Jie Bu Ba Ni Ma Ni Ma Tong Yi Ye Wa Yi Ge Hong Bi Pong Ba Tam Jie Na Bar De Ma Chang Ze Da Wei Du Bo Bu Ti Jian Ba Tam Jie Xin Du Ba Ma Le Bei Chun Ne E Wang Ne Pa Ba Xin Du E Ra Ba Se Ma Chang Ze Ge Bei Ta Ma Ne Da Ba Wei Chen Wei Un Nan Ne Ma Ye Jiang Yun Gong Gun Ni Bo Ge Da Ye Gong Ne Na Ba Zhou Ma Chang Ze Sa Ji Ma La Cha Ge Te Gi Ne Jin Xia Di Dong Ma Tong Nie Jian Ze Yi Ge Hong Ge Repa tu po nam ni ke ma. Cha tse te ma ke ma shi ma. Nyam ni te shi chu ni ma. So om da yang da ten. Di pa chen po chung pa ni ma. Cha tse ku ne po ro ka. Chai nu ne na pa ke ma. Ye tu ma ni ke. Re pa re trong man cha de tu ri sham ni ta ho ge na be sa bi ni re ra me da ra tam be che je ge sum na yo wa ni cham je lai so ye na be re da da chen cha nong Tara ni ju pe yi ge, do na ma lu pa ni se ma. Cha ve pa yi to nam ge ho, ha da me am ji ye de ma. Gu ne bo cha ga wa ji ge, se da me na ma nye ba se ma. Cha ze ni ma da wa ge, che ni bo la ve ra se ma. Ara ni ju tu da ra yi, shin du ta gu rin ne se ma. Cha ze ti ni sum nam ge, shi re tu da yang da te ma. Den da lo ma ni ju so na, cho ba tu le ra cho ni ma. Sa le ma di te ma di tam, sa se wa ni shu sa.